Good morning to any replayers. If you're a replayer, you can still participate. You can tap on the screen for hearts. You can share this broadcast with anybody that needs it. And you can, of course, find me on Twitter or Snapchat. Hi, 2019 Lady Cava, and you can follow me on there. You can ask me questions. I actually answer bunches of questions on Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook. I don't do much on Facebook because I'm not into Facebook as much. Okay. Anyway, good morning. Good morning to anybody that can join us live. And I'm actually going to set up my spreadsheets here. Hi, Candy Thorn. I'm going to set up my spreadsheet because today is Tuesday and it's Task It Tuesday. So if you are new to me, my name is Joannazarach, and I do a daily money habits broadcast where I basically remind people, hi Kimi Yarab, hi Cindy, love for you. And hi, I remind people about taking care of their money every single day. Because if you make finances a habit, good morning, you will be better off. Hey, happy Tuesday. Yay, set up your mint dog. Oh my God. I know. I'm like, I do feel like I just harp on it. I did like 3 Snapchats. I did 3 snaps on it yesterday. I was like mint and mint and mint. It's because it's such an important foundation to know where your money is. And you really can't go forward if you don't know your starting point. And so that's really, really important. Hi, everybody that's joining. I'm just setting up a little bit of my spreadsheet. It's really not, it's, I usually start on Tuesday, I start with a task, and on Wednesday we kind of go through and see like how do you actually do it. But if you're new to me, oh yeah, I already went through my introduction. So on Tuesday we talk about a task that I want you guys to try out. Hi, Christina. And so a lot in ratting out. Oh, eating out. Okay, I was like ratting out. Yeah, sometimes that's a revelation, right? That's a reflection, and we say, okay, wow, that's a lot of money that's going out, right? Yeah, no, at first I was like, who are you ratting out? No, that's an important thing, right? Awareness is really the first step, right? And it's not like you need to. It's like you can do that, but you need to own it, right? And then you need to make sure you provide for it, right? You need to have provisions for your lifestyle. And that's so important, right? I know sometimes people do that and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it, right? Because you see the whole picture. But the thing that you can do that's really great with like Mint, you can set up a budget and see how am I doing throughout the month and what can I do? Are there small or big changes that I can make? Can I tweak it a little bit? Because it's a lot about the habitual behavior, like the things that we just do on a regular basis. But today I want to talk about risk. Reason why, because I keep talking about the 5 levers of wealth, right? Income, taxation, investment, big purchases, and risk. And I realized, that we don't really cover as much about risk as I should. So I was like, okay, I don't know any tools necessarily. So of course it's a task. So here's what I want to do. Let's see if I can actually make this a little bit bigger. What would you do? And it basically, I just want to go over like the what I think are just like primary risks in our lives. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to start thinking about, as you're going through all the other exercises and all the habit formation, think about what you would do in a given situation. This is why all of what we do is so important when it comes to net worth. So I'm going to flip it. And I'm going to do, okay, so we're going to see if we can do this. Okay, basically, this is all I started up with. So if you have other risks, I would love for you to give me other ideas of what the risks are. And I might rename them. So let me just go through the risk. And this is what you need to do for yourself. So this is the task of the day. And tomorrow I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you what I do. You can definitely ask a question. Do you want to wait till I go over it? Or do you want to, you can also, you can find me on Twitter or Snapchat if you don't want to do it in this form, but you can definitely ask me a question. If you, you know what my answer is going to be, invest, invest in something. But we definitely ask me a question. So, but let me go through this risk assessment so that I can deliver some of the content to folks that are watching. So, risk. I put like some of the things that we think about when it comes to risk, and then I started adding things that are put in the market account. Okay, like the stock market. I think it's a great idea. Mutual fund, Vanguard. Open a Vanguard account with $4,000. You probably meet the minimums. I would put it in there. If you could I would, again, try to do some sort of tax favored account. But we can talk in detail about what your situation is. So risk is really like, look around Vanguard. That's right. Vanguard Mutual Fund. It's the lowest cost fees. So when it comes to risk, look around in your life and look at the things that that are necessary for your life, right? And so a lot of people are living to paycheck. We want to fix that, right? So once you get on your way where your income's exceeding expenses, when you're accumulating net worth, what you really need to do is make sure you understand your risks. And so home risk is just really like property risk. It's where you're living, like it's whether you're renter or where you're an owner, like your property. If you have damage to your property, whether it's, like a total loss, which it could be a fire or a tornado or a flood, or even something breaking down in your house, like an operating issue, or theft, right, or some sort of damages to your property. So always think about, just play it out and say, what would I do? Like, what happened? What could happen? And what would you do? Actually, that's what should say, what could happen. I don't know what could happen. So, and it's not to be a pessimist. It's really to be prepared. What I want you guys to do is think about, these are the things that really throw people's paths off. People get really thrown off when they do not understand these risks. Your entire financial life, what you're trying to build, can be really thrown upside down. So, and there is a balance around insurance and buying insurance, right? Insurance is a big industry, but really think about, what would you do? What could happen to your home? And what would you do? So home, think about that. Just think it through and say, do I have property insurance? What my insurance is? Review those things, right? And these are the things you don't do daily, but that's why I said, I don't talk about it as much, but I think they're important. Car risk. Again, what's your auto insurance and what could happen if you lost the use of your car? If you're car dependent, like I live in Chicago, there's a lot of public transit. My kids go to school, we walk them to school. So all the things that you do in life, how car dependent are you, and what would you do? Job risk. I think people underplay that one so much. When it comes to job risk, I really want you to think about what is going to happen, or what would happen if for some reason you lost your job, for whatever reason, right? If you're no longer able to generate an income. And I want to show you guys an interesting exercise that I did around income, and then it's going to be on a second tab in a minute. Then there is the risks that we don't want to think about. And again, those are risks either to yourself or your family, right? Again, this is why I harp so much on creating financial freedom, whatever it may mean to you, to give yourself a more breathing room when it comes to money. Because disability risk, fatality, or long-term illness are things I think about. Why? Because I have small children. And so, are you totally and utterly dependent on a single person making an income? What happens if you or your loved one becomes disabled? What could happen? What would you do, right? Like, do you have a job that requires physical ability versus like, I sit in front of a computer. So there's a lot of things. And by the way, I'm just talking to you guys. So there's a lot of things that could happen to me, and I could still figure out a way to continue. It's for sure, yes, 3 to 6 months. If you're dependent on yourself, like a small business owner, I mean, you guys, some people would like think that it might be crazy, but a year or two is actually not a bad idea. Again, once you become more mature, remember guys, it's a journey. I'm not asking everybody to get there immediately, but longer term, when you're wealth building, that's part of the plan. Long-term illness, right? We all hear about people who come down with a degenerative disease or cancer. Those things take you out. They don't only take you out, they probably take your spouse out, because they're all of a sudden have to focus on you. So be prepared. Just think through it. If you have a business, make sure you have a general liability policy or professional liability. And then I just added healthcare, because I feel like we don't have enough money to pay for healthcare. So anyhow, those are the things that I want to think about, because risk, those things that are unlikely. So risk is all about the unlikely events. And For myself, I'll share with you guys tomorrow, like what are my policies. Like I'm not over-insured, but I carry adequate insurance. I have a combination of what I call self-insurance, which means I can flex my assets to cover a lot. And then I have what I call catastrophic insurance, right? Which is to things that, when an unlikely event happens, that I have insurance that would cover that large loss, which is, home, car, and fatality. So there are certain types of insurances that are really, really expensive, and that's why I don't carry them, because I'd rather be self-insured. And because I have the discipline to invest, it's actually worked for me. But if you're going to be like, hey, it's either a $5,000 long-term disability insurance, or I go on a Disney cruise, right? Like that's not the trade-off. When you're making a decision about an expensive insurance policy, don't spend that money on like a luxury lifestyle. You need to invest it, right? That's the only way you're going to be self-insured, if you have the discipline to convert what would have been a premium to being self-insured, right? This is why I harp on the investing piece, because that's how you get that asset base where you feel confident that you're going to be able to maintain, right? A lot of it is about maintaining a certain level of lifestyle, right? And again, I talk about actually lowering a lot your lifestyle needs, your bare necessity, your necessities, lowering the cost of the things that are necessary in your life, because it'll free up money so you can self-insure against this risk and invest it. So here's the really, really important thing that I want you guys to talk to you about. And if you've been on my Periscopes, you may have heard of me talking about it before. And I'm talking about diversification. Here's the thing. The majority of you, myself included, at some point in the past, were completely dependent on self-generated income. And what I mean by that is the income that you generate from your labor. Whether it's labor, whether it's your creativity, your business, we're all overly dependent on that. Like 97% of us. And what happens is, you have adequate, right? You have more, in the US, there are some systems, you have to be really, really poor to access some of those things, some of those benefits. And in Europe, you have a bigger cushion, right, for some of the basics. And it's true, right? Like, so your taxation system is different. The economics are a little bit different, but your experience, right? You're gonna land here. In the US, sometimes people are like landing below the line, right? Like this is the problem in the US. Sometimes you have so much risk and you have liability, so because of such easy access to credit in the US, that sometimes people fall below the line. And that's really, really, really hard, because you may still have income, but your income is being chipped away at because you don't have as much access to services as you would do in Europe. It's totally true. You have to do it in context. So I talk a lot about my US-based experience. US is great in two ways. So the downside, and there's upside to it, right? The downside is you can really fall below the line. And I mean negative net worth and really struggling. But the US also allows people to go really, really high, right? It's so easy to start businesses in the US. I remember going to France and telling them I had a consulting business, and they were shocked. They were like, how many people and how many? I'm like, oh, just me and my partner. I just started a business. I just filled out an application. I filled out some forms and we're a business, right? It is super, super easy. And I think it's a lot more regulations in Europe. Anyhow, back to you being an asset. Here's the thing. I talk about diversification like a crazy person. Now, I'm not probably as diversified in my capital assets as some people, right? I don't own rental real estate. Mostly because I'm lazy and I don't get it and I'm not good at it. I don't own any high yield producing assets, anything that's anything I don't understand. So I'm a paper asset owner, and paper asset just means stock market. I invest in the global growth of business, I suppose. Very well diversified over that. But the diversification that I talk about is income versus assets. in Spain, right? In US, like literally, when people in the US, I'm like, you are a business. Like in the US, every person has basically a sole proprietorship. It is like, it takes 5 minutes to become a sole proprietorship because most states don't require you to register if you're just using your name. Like JoannAzarach sole proprietorship is a given. You just need a federal tax ID, which you can get online, like instantly. You can go on federal employee identification number. You just Google FEIN in the US. You just like Google it, you get an identification number, boom, you're in business. You need to check your state laws. Some states require things. If you want a fancy name, like if you want to make up a name for yourself that's not your name, that you need to register it because the state doesn't like people doing business when they don't know who the person is. They want to make sure they know the person behind it. Hi, how are you? But yeah, otherwise it's so easy in the US. And it seems hard if you've never done it, but once you've done it, you're like, oh my God, this is the easiest thing in the world. Start a business, right? It's not easy to run a business. It's not easy to, like, the technicalities of the paperwork are easy enough. Okay, so let's talk about you as an asset. So here's the thing. Most people are relying on themselves as income generator. And here's the, oh, hello from Russia. Я не говорю по-русски. Just gonna say it right there. Я не говорю. Because I forgot. I used to know a little bit of Russian. I'm Polish. Okay. Here is my spreadsheet. Okay, let's start with something. Okay, here, let's do this. Okay, so I want to talk about risk, but I got so excited about this concept, I had to share it. Okay. Here's the idea, guys. Your annual income that you make is converted into the equivalent capital asset at the average rate of return of the market. And again, as you know, I'm conservative, so I only use 8% as the rate of return. And we don't get convoluted or get all hung up about taxes and blah, blah, blah. We're just using it as a way for you to comprehend. What is this spreadsheet about? If you make $50,000 a year, that's your annual income, you're basically the equivalent, you are the equivalent of an asset that's worth $625,000. Let me know if you need to ask questions about it, but here, I'll repeat it. So if you yourself are bringing in $50,000 a year, it would be the same as if you had built up a net worth of $625,000, sat on it, and made 8% a year. So I want you to start understanding that this is what I talk about when I talk about diversification. You're this asset, that's how much you're worth if you're making 50 a year. So basically, if you could accumulate that, you could be making the equivalent on just passive income, right? But I want you to think of yourself as an asset and understand that you need to diversify yourself because you're a portion, right? I want you to diversify away from just your labor income. There are lots of other incomes that still are effort, but this is labor income. And labor income is where someone sets an expectation that you show up and perform a job for them to benefit their business. So what happens if let's do 80. I don't know. And if you want me to do a number, put it in the comments and I'll put it in my little calculator. By the way, I just made it up. So $80,000 is basically the equivalent of having $1 million asset that's generating income. So I also want you to feel good about yourself. Like as you start generating more and more income, you are becoming a more valuable asset. So that's why when I think about asset diversification, and actually I've never done it in a net worth perspective, like work backwards and say, how much of an asset am I with my income? But you know what? I'm going to do that exercise. I'm going to create income, your income, your spouse's income, and then your actual net worth, where we think about hard assets. We always think of net worth as hard paper assets of what value they have. But you and I and everyone that works has a value that you're creating and generating. So anyway, if you have a salary of $80,000, it is basically the equivalent of having $1 million at 8% of return. All right, so let's keep going up. Six figures, the elusive and desired. I don't know why people like really love the round numbers, and like, you know, when you get over this $100,000, people get really, really excited. That's like at least in the US, that's kind of like the semblance of like having kind of made it to this next level. And basically that's an equivalent of $1.25 million in hard assets, what you're generating. So if you've made it, like that's kind of, and it's like, you know, I mean, I'm not going to get into like assigning worth to human life. All I'm saying is this is a worth that's been designated to your profession, where you've gotten, you know, how far I've gotten in the in your life. And by the way, the typical rule of thumb is if you're working for someone, your salary, you're probably generating 10 times the value for that company, right? So this is why working for yourself can often is hard, but it's also beneficial because eventually you're going to reap all the rewards of your own efforts. So 150 is, you know, a 1.875, again, 200,000, you know, $200,000 straight income after all taxes. And if you're really still struggling, that means your expenditures, your expectations of lifestyle have gone really way up. But this is kind of my, you know, the 2.5 million in assets is often, you know, as I've talked about before, it's kind of where people's, where you should really be okay in today's sort of modern society. Financing for dummies. That's what, you know, the journey of becoming more mature on when it comes to finances. And by the way, I just came up with this concept. I've never heard of anyone talk about it before, but because I talk about diversification, you guys getting my brain stimulated, right? And I'm a little math geek. And I come up with these concepts where I try to convert numbers and reveal something. By the way, don't feel bad. Financial knowledge is a journey. And this is what's happening. People want to get over here. And they're starting over here. You see the gap? It's my face, actually. You have to walk across my face. You have to gain the skill sets. You have to gain the knowledge over time. It's really hard to jump to over here. That's why I'm trying to break down some of the things around habits, around what you can do today. You know, everyone can do a mint account. Everybody, right? Everyone can evaluate their spending. The getting to investing piece and be more sophisticated, it takes a little bit of time, right? So you can get started, but you're not going to get really good at it until you do it for a few years. This is a long-term, in case you're wondering, my play on this is long-term. I'm going to take a really long time to see people move along this journey. Anyway, that's really the, when it comes to risk and diversification, I just really wanted you guys to, one, think about risk assessment, really look about where in your life there is risk and how are you protecting yourself against it. And again, I do have Instagram. I'm not really good at Instagram. I have to say, I've only been on Instagram. I've been on Instagram for a couple months. And so it's the same handle. I suck at Instagram. Let's just face it. I'm good at video. I like Snapchat. I'm better on Snapchat. Yeah, I'm really like video, so I'm good at Snapchat, and Periscope. Obviously, I haven't done Facebook Live, mostly because I don't have a Facebook presence as a person, and Twitter. I like Twitter. Hi, how are you? So I'm talking today, just to sum it up, because I'm going to finish up. I don't have to, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Here's what I talked about today, and I'll go back to just a snapshot of risk assessment. I want you guys to really think on what are you doing about these risks. And again, this isn't a scare tactic, and it's, you don't run out and get all kinds of insurance. What I really want you guys to do is think about, for all the risks that are basically going to put your family or yourself in financial difficulty, what could happen? No, never have. So goodbye. Never happened. And so what I want you guys to do is really think about what could happen in this situation and what would you do, right? And again, it's not to be Debbie Downer, it's to really, for you to do a risk assessment on yourself. Risk is the fifth lever of your wealth building. You can do all the things right. You can figure out income, you can get good on taxation, you can be an investor, and you can even manage your big purchases, but you've not protected against the downside, the risk. It can actually undo all your wealth building that you've done. So this is what I want you to do. Once you're on your way in the financial journey, I want you to make sure that you are well aware that you don't lose it, right? It's like, how do you, because job loss is the number one thing that I hear when it comes to people's impact on, they were on track and they lost their job, and there's just a, and again, there's no insurance against it, right? You can't buy unemployment. Well, there's unemployment insurance, but it doesn't cover it. But you need to self-insure against job loss through investing, through wealth building, and then through some insurance. Again, catastrophic, it's a combination of being self-insured and catastrophic insurance. So think about where your balance is. But remember, if you're not buying all the insurance policies, make sure you take that, what you would have spent on insurance premium, and then again, start self-insuring. And that's when you start thinking of yourself as an asset. Think about what you're worth, what you're doing income-wise, how that's part of your net worth equation. But again, you need to diversify away from just labor income and get smart about it, right? So passive income, smart passive income. I always recommend Pat Flynn because I do think he's amazing, and he gets people to reveal how they made the journey to some passive income. And I think that's really, really important to know there are very many different ways. And then, of course, investing, because that's just another passive income. Like, that's just capital base and making a return on it, which, again, I'm not very good at passive income other than paper income and accumulation. So that's why I teach about it. But tomorrow we'll go over this again, because I'm going to tell you what I do on my risks. So Walk the Walk Wednesday, I'm actually going to tell you, like, this is the insurance policies I have, right? Like, this is the type of insurance I believe in, and feel free to ask me about the types of insurance that that you may or may not have. And again, your choices may need to be different depending on your risk profile. But I do think that there is a component of that self-insurance and catastrophic insurance that you need to evaluate, and then you need to really look at it, especially if you have dependents, right? If you're just yourself and you have a safety net, maybe your parents or siblings, then you're probably all right for a lot of it. Hey. And so if you're, but if you're not, if you have dependents and you don't have a safety net, really consider about how much of your income, like, can you offset a little bit for catastrophic, so that you're not thrown off by some of those things that are just unlikely, but when they do happen, they can be devastating. So to end on the high note, don't forget, you are an asset and you're an income generating asset, but I do want you to diversify. And so, we're gonna use this annual income to equivalent asset spreadsheet again. And I have a feeling it's I'm gonna put it on Snapchat too, maybe even on Instagram. Again, I'm experimenting with the various social media platforms, because why not? I'm giving away content left and right, and helping people think differently about money. All right, thank you for everyone that joined. If you have the questions, I don't know if Candy Thorne, if you're still on, if you got your question answered about Vanguard mutual funds, but that's the way I would go. Again, yeah, I'm like a one-trick pony. I'm investing in capital assets because I know it works. Smart people, everyone who has wealth, has a lot of it invested in the market, and it's not the only way to make money. It's just to me, that's the way I know to create a nest egg. So thank you so much. Come join again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Let me see. I'm looking at my, actually, I'm going to do a Money Matters. I've fallen off my Money Matters because of scheduling. But you know what? Today, I am going to do a Money Matters at 5. I don't know what it's going to be on yet. But you know what? I miss my Money Matters. I want to dig in deep into a topic, and I'm going to do that this afternoon at 5, and then I'll be back on tomorrow at 10 a.m. for anyone that can join. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I'll see you. Bye.